Okay, welcome back to the Old Classic Car channel. In this video I'll just be covering the remaining work to do on the 1937 Talbot before we have a go at seeing if it'll run or not. When I think I finished the last video, the carburettor was in pieces and all clagged up and pretty grotty looking inside. So I'm going to carry on cleaning out the inside of the carburettor, blow it through, basically just do a few basic checks, check that the needle valve's okay in the float, and then put it back together, back on the car, and then start thinking about rigging up a temporary fuel feed so that we can have a go and just see if there are any signs of life when they spin it over with the ignition on and a drop of fuel in the carburettor. I haven't tried running it, it's not run for over 45 years, so I don't really know what to expect. I have no idea whether it'll run, and if it will run, how well it's going to run. So it's all a bit of a voyage of discovery really. It's about freezing today, so I'm not going to stand here for too long without moving, so I think we'll crack on with the carburettor and take it from there. Make a start on removing the old Zenith carburettor. This is a fuel pipe in from the pump, which is mounted over the other side. Let's whiz this off carefully. There we go. The beauty of cars like this, there's so much space around to work on. It's not like a Mini where you're poking around at the back of the engine to get at the carburettor or anything like that. This is a lot more sensible. And there's the first thing probably to clean up, is this gauze on the fuel inlet here. I'll try and clean that up a little bit. I've still got the old petrol out over at the bench. So put that somewhere safe. Carry on taking this apart and whiz all this off, get it in the bench on the vise down at the bench, and then see what we're faced with inside. That's all the linkages disconnected. This one, the vacuum advance, I wasn't able to disconnect at the carburettor end, so I've disconnected it over at the distributor so that pipe can come off with it. And this is a linkage for the automatic choke, that's disconnected. So the carburettor itself is just held on with 2 1/4" Whitworth nuts. So we'll whiz these off, and it should, in theory, come off. We can hope, we can always hope, but you never quite know with these ancient vehicles. They can always throw a bit of a curved ball. This one's a bit fiddly to get at. Sometimes a stud will come out with the nut just for added excitement, but this appears to be alright. Like I was saying before, at least the accessibility is excellent really. Sometimes these pre-war cars have got the big side panels to get in the way, or the carburettor is an updraft and it's hung below the inlet manifold, but this, I couldn't really ask for any better accessibility, to be honest. Let's trudge on. I'm very conscious that watching someone fiddling with the engine of an old car isn't the most riveting of viewing. Well, if you like it, let me know please in the comments. I never quite know how much of this kind of thing to include when putting these little videos together. Some people like to watch everything, some people just want to zip through and see the end result. So I'm never quite sure how much of this kind of stuff to include. Anyway, that nut is almost off now. I'll try not to drop it somewhere inaccessible. The other day I nearly dropped a nut down one of the plug holes, but fortunately I've left the plug screwed in finger tight and I was able to retrieve the nut, because otherwise I'd have had to lift the head off, which would have been irksome to say the least. Right, so that's both nuts off. There we go. I assume this hasn't been off for a very, very long time. Hopefully nothing breaks. There we go. Just carefully thread the vacuum advance pipe, so I don't want to misshape that particularly. There we go. This one An ancient carburettor removed and ready to go on the bench, which is where I'll go off to now, I think. Okay, I've just got the old carburettor off and on the bench now, and giving it a quick bath in some old petrol just to clean it up, get all the old claggy, muddy, yucky stuff off, bits of old spiders and all sorts, and then I can have a quick peek inside and see what we're up against. It's not too dirty, but it's always nice if things are a bit cleaned off before you start fiddling with them too greatly. So just go and carry on with the trusty brush, and it can dry off, and the old fuel evaporates quite quickly, so that's not really an issue. And I can have a look inside and see what it's like in there. Right, so I'll just take the top of the float chamber off, i.e. this bit here. You can see there's a lot of red, sandy, dusty, claggy stuff in there, so I don't think it would have been very happy if I'd tried to get it to run and left that in there. You can see it all. Just trying, the light's not great, but if you look over here, it's all sort of claggy, soily type stuff. So that was never going to go well. So I think what I'll do, I'll take out the float, which is this, which pivots on here, and there's a small screw there, which you can't really see, but there's a screw there, and I presume that holds that in. And then we can clean all this out. There's another gauze little filter down there to clean, which doesn't look too bad actually, but we'll do that while we're at it. And I'll go and find that cutaway diagram that I've got of these carburettors. It came up looking a lot better for a wash and a bath of petrol. The black paint's a little flaky, and that's not the underworld. I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, it doesn't look too bad. But yes, there's a lot of, you can see here, sort of caked in soil, which was never going to be a good thing to have going through the rest of the carburettor. So it was the right idea to take it all off and have a bit of a clean up inside. So I've got some carburettor cleaner on the shelf somewhere, so I think I'll give that a bit of a go, and I'll fire up the camera once I've got a bit further down the road, I think. Right, I didn't think this screw here was going to come off. It was really tight and it was starting to chew up. But fortunately I was able to get a little bit of heat on it with a blow lamp. Obviously if there was any hint of fresh fuel anywhere in the area I wouldn't have tried that, but with no fuel about I was able just to warm the casting up a little bit, and this came out okay. So if I pull this out, it should release the float assembly, all being well. So better not lose that. Put that in the box of goodies over here, and hopefully, because I'm not very familiar with these carburettors. There we go. Oh, see, and that brings up the, so if we get that out of there, as you can see inside there, it's not pretty. And while this is off, I'll check this to see if it leaks at all, see if it floats. So I'll put that over here for now. And this, I'm assuming, is the needle valve, whereas on an SU that would be buried away in the top of the float chamber. And this old Zenith, it's down here. That's interesting. I just can't quite get at it. There we go. Try not to lose that either. Put that there for safekeeping. Oh, it's getting cold now. So yeah, so that's revealed a lot more of the interior of the float chamber. I think we'll clean that out and see if we can get that looking a little more tickety-boo. But it's getting very cold now, so I think I'll go in soon. Okay, I've made a start on cleaning things up a little bit. Just clean up the linkages and the exterior. I mean, it's not exactly showroom, but it's okay. So have a quick look in here. I've been cleaning it up a little bit inside here because it was quite claggy with the old mucky yuck that was in there. So it's looking a lot better in there now. I just need to blow through any of these fuel ways or airways, basically anything I can find. This all appears to be free. This all appears to work, so that's okay. Everything here seems alright. There's no great slop or play in the linkages and the butterfly, etc, etc. So really it shouldn't take too much more. I wondered about taking these out, but I'm always a bit wary of dismantling any more than I have to in case something breaks, shears off, snaps off, etc. Right, I've reinstalled the float. So obviously this lifts up as the level of fuel in here increases, and by pivoting on the mounting pin here it closes down the needle valve. That's the theory. So what I'm going to do is pour some fuel in here and just see if it does as it's supposed to do. And then I'll leave the fuel in here and hopefully that'll test just to see if that leaks or not. So just put a drop of fairly fresh fuel in here just to see if we're in business or not. That goes on there. So I'll pop the gasket back on, don't want to forget that. And we'll sneak the lid back on. And hopefully get the screws back in. There are 3 screws in all. Oh, I think that's about as cleaned up as I'm going to get it for now. At least it's a bit more pleasant to handle. All the linkages have been lubricated, any adjusters have been freed off to make sure they're working okay. So I think that's ready to go back on the car. Let's start thinking about putting the carburettor back on. Now, I thought I'd somehow mislaid all my bits and pieces, all the fittings, because my trusty plastic box is empty. And I was sort of beginning to panic a little bit, thinking, well, where's the fitting for there and all the other bits and bobs. But then I realised that I've actually got 2 identical trays in play, which I hadn't realised before, so that was a relief. So I'll put those together, I think. Keep them all safe over there, and let's go and find the carburettor. This has been cleaned up to a reasonable standard for the purposes of this, so we're going to win any shows, but never mind. So I'm going to go and find the gasket to go on here. There wasn't a gasket on there, but I think it'd be better if there was one, because this is just like quite a solid heat insulator, probably asbestos or something, so I think it's going to need a gasket on there, so I'll go and find one for that, and then this can be bolted back on. Yeah, I found one that should be suitable. I didn't have to go routing too far, this was hanging up on a nail, so all I need to do is just open up the mounting holes where the studs go through ever so slightly to the outside, and then that should do the trick. So I've got a hole punching set here, so I'll just extend those slightly. This is the right diameter, so that'll do the job hopefully. I mean, these punches are a bit on the cheapo side, but hopefully they'll do the trick. So just like I said, I just want to extend them out a little bit. Okay, well that's on. It's not perfect, but that's the right diameter, that's the main thing. This is good all the way around. so it's just caught a little bit there, but it's okay. Just for the record, I did have a look at the gasket in this set that I've got for the other carburettor, but where it mounts onto the manifold, this is larger. This is a DBA 42 or DBVA 42 carburettor, the spare one, which I've got for the comma. And while it's the same up here, this is a greater diameter than here, so that's the difference between the two carbs. So while there are some parts which could be used on the spare carb, the whole thing itself isn't interchangeable. So at least that's something I've learnt, which is quite handy to know. So let's go and mount this on there. So let's get this put on. I won't be reconnecting the fuel inlet just yet, because I'll rig up a temporary fuel supply to go straight into there if I can find a piece of pipe with this fitting on, the banjo fitting, because like I said before, I don't want to run from anything in the tank as yet, because the tank will probably need draining and the pump will need checking out. So for now I'll just rig up a gravity feed just to see what the chances are of the engine actually starting. So let's get these whizzed on, reconnect the vacuum pipe, reconnect the throttle and the choke and this automatic choke contraption here. Oil these joints up as well while I'm at it, just as we go along, clean this all up a little bit, and then let's see how it looks when I've done that. Right, here we go. What spanner have we got here? Spear point. I do like using small spanners because there's a risk if you use really long spanners that have got plenty of swing on them, you end up stripping a thread. So wherever possible when refitting, I like to use smaller spanners if I can, because you can always nip things up later if they're not quite tight enough. But if you over tighten things can spiral very quickly. I'm also going to put a drop of oil straight into the oil filter housing, just to be on the safe side. Right, next thing to do is wriggle up a fuel supply. This is the original fitting here, and I found a new filter to go on it, so that's all good. That was in one of these boxes down here. I found that, which matches it, the banjo fitting. So now I just need to sort of see if I can make something up with all these fuel system bits in here, try and wriggle up some sort of temporary fuel supply. It just goes to show that one of the most important things with filling with old cars like this is not having an immaculate garage or anything else. It's having boxes and boxes of bits on the shelf that you can fall back on when you need to cobble something together like this, because if you had to send away for everything, speaking personally, I just know I'd get nothing done at all. So this shows how important it is to have all these boxes of old clobber kicking around, because sooner or later you're going to need something out of them. That's where the filter came from. There's one or two others in there as well, which are going to be very handy to have, no doubt, on other vehicles. So yeah, I'm going to have a route through here and see what I can cobble together. Right, I think we might be getting somewhere. That's the original fitting for the carburettor, and then with the new filter on it. I've got a spare fitting here, and I found this banjo, just the one, which will fit into my temporary fuel pipe, which you may have seen in the Morris 8 video. So I'll string this up, attach it under the bonnet. That can go straight onto the carburettor, attached by this, which is the same thread as that, the original. And we should be good to go. Okay, well, that appears to fit. So I think now I'll take each of the plugs out. They're all only finger tight anyway, so I'll take all those out, clean them all up and install them for the final time. Tighten up all these, and just make sure again that the leads are okay, and then disconnect the fuel pump, because as soon as the engine turns over it'll start pulling up muck from the tank if there is any in there. So if I disconnect the inlet into the pump over there, then it won't try and draw anything up from the tank if there is anything in there. I'll worry about the fuel pump side of things afterwards, but for the purposes of testing, a simple little gravity feed will do for now. Got any coughs of life at all? Yeah, go on. Whoa. Try. No, just try again. Come on, try again. Okay, I'll just put a drop more fuel in. I did cough though.
Yeah, that first one. Do I need to be doing it particularly short or longer?
Just put a drop of fuel straight in again. Now go on, give it a go. So the ignition's on, isn't it? Light on.
Yeah.
Okay, go on, try again. Try again. Just keep doing it. Just keep it going.
Another cough.
Yes, I noticed. I mean, these are the original plugs and everything, so you never quite know how good they are or not. The plugs are wet, so because don't forget I did put a fair bit of diesel down each bore as well, so it might oil the plugs up a few times before it'll actually go. It might just take a few goes to I'll just put a drop of fuel down the carburetor.
Can I keep the accelerator where it is or back off?
No, just keep it with a bit of throttle.
Okay.
Might backfire. Right, go on then. Well,
Cut out again.
right, I think both batteries are pretty much dead now, so I think we'll put them on charge overnight, and in the meantime I'll take out all 6 plugs again, just clean them up, because I think they might just be oiling up with the diesel. I mean, I didn't put a great deal down, but I did put some diesel down each cylinder just to try and free the pistons and the valves off before the first time I started spinning it over. So it could just be that they're oiling up all the time. So batteries on charge, plugs out, clean them up, and then probably try again tomorrow. Around 22 years ago, I was playing around in a barn over in Poynton where this used to be stored, and I was doing exactly the same job on this engine, big old straight 6 side valve, as I'm doing on the Talbot over here. So it's sort of history repeating itself a little bit, but at least this time I'm at home and I'm not stuck in a barn in the middle of nowhere with no electricity or water or anything else. So I guess things have moved on a little bit, but yeah, 22 years ago I was doing exactly the same job with this one. All good fun. Okay, well, it's another day, the batteries are charged up. Now I think before I do anything else, I'm going to clean up the battery connections. They're obviously the originals and they're fairly old, so I think I'll clean all those up before I even try again, and then see where we go from there. But I also cleaned this up a bit the other day as well, just to improve it. I think it's looking a bit more ship shape. Yeah, just a quick update on things. I did decide to do a compression test on all cylinders the other day. I figured that's the one thing I hadn't checked yet. And when I did it, obviously the engine was cold because I've not had it running yet, but with the throttle wide open, all the plugs out, I got some very interesting readings actually. I got 0, 90, 0, 0, 60 and 0. So 4 of the 6 cylinders were showing no compression at all, and that either meant lots of hold pistons, or more likely sticking valves. So I whizzed off the side covers because it's a side valve engine, and down here you can just about see where the side covers are, one there and one there. And if you actually, I got my lad to spin the engine over and you could see that several of the valves were sticking, which was kind of good news. But the trick was then as to what to do about it. Now fortunately with the plugs out, it was possible to see the tops of the valves that were sticking, so I was able to get a drift and a light hammer and turn the engine so that the tappet was well away from the end of the valve stem, i.e. leaving a gap between the valve and the tappet, and that gap meant that I could tap from the top the valve, give it a few sharp cracks, lots of WD-14 things down there as well, and each of them released with a loud twang as the valve popped back into place, basically thanks to the compression and the tension of the springs, and each of them responded to a gentle tap with a drift through the plug holes. I checked the compressions again, and I've got compressions all the way across now. They're not super high, sort of 60, 70, 80, 90, those sort of levels, but considering that I haven't actually done a valve job on it, and it's just the valves and seats as they are now, and as it was parked up, I didn't think that was too bad. So hopefully with a drop of fuel in the carburettor, and now I've got some compression in there to draw the fuel through the inlet manifold and into the cylinders, and I know I've got a spark because I checked that again the other day. There might just be a chance of it firing up. It did cough and splutter last time I tried it, but this time maybe it'll actually start. So that's the next plan. I did give the front end a bit of a clean up as well, just gave them a mild clean. I mean these would actually come up very shiny indeed, but I don't want to go too far with it really, because then it would look a bit silly compared to this tatty old paint. So for now I'll just clean them up, polish them, which will help preserve them. I did that front panel as well because that looked really red rusty. That's looking a bit more satisfactory. I haven't done the horns yet. I did this on the top of the radiator grille just to sort of spruce it up a little bit. So it's one of those sort of jobs where you just do a bit and go away and then come back again and do another 10 minutes or so, and gradually you work your way through it all. So there's some potential there in the existing bright work, but the priority at the moment is just to see if it'll run. So I think the next thing to do is get the battery, put another fresh drop of fuel in. I bought some the other day, and then just see if there are any signs of life whatsoever. Now we've got some compression, because without compression it's probably not going to do a great deal. So let's go and get sorted out. Right, well, I've put some fuel in, battery's on, charged up, although it's not the best battery in the world. My junior assistant is just clambering on board, so let's see if there is any life in this engine. We just put some more fuel in.
Do I need to have on the front?
You can give it a little. If it kicks in, just give it a little bit of throttle. I'll tell you what to watch. Can you see the oil pressure gauge to the right under your hand? There's one of them that says oil pressure. Do you want the light over? It should come up. Just keep an eye on it. Once it comes up, if it starts to run, just make sure that carries on showing a number. If it drops off, just turn the engine off. Don't ask. Just turn the key off. Okay. Let's just put a drop of fuel in then.
That sounded nice. It sounded a bit like litre.
That's a big 6-cylinder side valve, isn't it? Okay, yeah, if it starts, just give it a little bit of throttle. Come on then. Right, battery off, little dodge in place. Let's try again. Before you do it, just put your foot all the way down and then back off again on the throttle. Right, now just let your foot off now. Okay, that just activates the choke, you see. Right, okay. Give it a whirl then. Well, the battery's on charge down there now, so I think, I'm still not convinced that much fuel's getting through. I took a couple of plugs out and they're not really wet at all. I'd have thought, even though it wasn't churning over very quickly, I would have thought they should be getting damp by now. So I think I'll just whiz the float chamber off the carburettor again and just have another look in there and just see if there's anything else that I can do inside, things to clean out, blow through, etc. Just to make sure that everything is on my side in there, because at the moment all the fuel seems to be pouring out of this overflow in the bottom of the inlet manifold here, which drains down a little pipe down there. So I'm just not quite, I think there's enough compression that it should be drawing it through, but I don't think there's enough fuel getting from in here in the float chamber through and mixing up with the air to be drawn through into the cylinders. I just don't think it's quite achieving that yet. So we'll take these 3 screws off and disconnect this pipe here, and that should enable me to take this lid off and just have another look inside the float chamber and just see if there's anything obviously amiss inside there. And then we'll just have a look in there, just in the bottom there, and just see if I can try and blow through some of the jets inside the carburettor itself. I thought I'd done that before, but it might need another go, so I think that'll keep me occupied for a few minutes anyway. I'll just have another quick clean out in here. I've cleaned it again in here, use some compressed air, because the fuel comes in this way, and the needle valve sits in there. The fuel fills this up until the float says stop. Right, we're back in the garage next day. Another battery's charged up, so let's see what happens. Right, I'll add a drop of fuel in here. Okay.
Turn the ignition on.
In a sec. Yeah.
Okay.
Cleaned out the carburettor, blew through all the jets that I could get at in there. Whether it's enough, I don't know. Let's just put a drop in here. Okay, ignition on them. Okay.
Do I need any throttle?
No, probably not.
Okay.
Okay, give it a go then. And again. Wow.
That was noisy.
Eh?
Everything was shaking in here so much.
Did it have oil pressure?
Yeah, it went up to about between 50.
Did it?
Yeah.
Alright, cool.
40.
Cool, we'll give it another go. I'll just put a drop of fuel in again, because it probably gets through a fair bit. Yeah, if you pop the ignition on again, give it a try. Go on. The result. Wow. Magic.
It goes up to about 50 and then stays.
Yeah, what I found is I don't use the choke on the carburettor, I just put my hand about 2/3 of the way across the inlet and that acts as a choke. Right, do you want to give it another go? Tell you what, I'll just put some more fuel in here. Are you alright in there? Yeah, it's not. It's smoky at the bottom, but down behind, but it's not so bad up here.
There's smoke everywhere.
It's just a bit sooty, that's all.
Oh, sooty.
Alright, go on then. She runs. A little smoky, as you'd expect. Oil pressure okay?
Yeah, it's about.
Switch her off now. Magic. So what were we getting? About 50 with some revs on it?
It's about 50 and at idle it's about 40.
Alright. That's not bad because that's its first run since 1976. Yeah, it's a little fumy. Probably best bail out for a bit if you come out. I'll disconnect the battery. It's not too bad, not too warm. Okay, well, that was a result, wasn't it? That sounded alright, didn't it?
It's a beast.
It is a...
Wow. I could only see through the back window and I could only really see the top.
Yeah, it's a little smoky, isn't it? Probably best come out for a bit. And
okay.
We're going up the doors a bit, I think. The battery's off. it's just a bit of fluid off the exhaust and stuff that's burning off there. I'll have a look around and see what drips there are, if any. But obviously don't want it to get too warm. That was a good test, wasn't it? So at least it shows we weren't too far out. It was just the fact that the battery was suffering yesterday, I think. No, I think.
It's really loud.
I think we can call that a result. So, in answer to the question, will it start? Yes, it will. Fantastic. We're able to prove that it does actually run. Just trying to let the smoke clear a little bit now. I'll fire it up again a bit later when it's cooled off, just to try and get some cycles of heat through it. But on first impressions, it sounded pretty healthy. There's not a great deal of exhaust on it, so it's a little louder than normal. Yeah, we've just got old WD-40 and all sorts of things burning off there. So when it's all cooled off, I'll have a look underneath, check for any major leaks. Not sure where my torch has gone. But yeah, it seems to run. It seems to have oil pressure. So I think the trick then, we'll have a few more test runs just to make sure that that wasn't a flash in the pan and that it will start on a fairly regular basis. And then next, I think, to look at will be the fuel supply. At the moment, obviously I'm running off a gravity feed, and I've disconnected the inlet to the mechanical pump over on the other side so that it doesn't draw up anything from the fuel tank that I don't want it to. So the tank will need draining, blow through the line with the compressed air, i.e. that, and then see if we can get it to run off the tank, a bit like we did with the Morris, but one step at a time. And I think today's objective was achieved, so I hope that was of interest. If you haven't seen the previous videos where I go and actually collect this from its long-term home and have a bit of a proper walk around it outside just to sort of see exactly what's what, then please go and check those out as well. Yeah, well, that was really quite exciting, so I hope that was fun to watch, as fun as it was to actually do it here. Hopefully the smoke will clear before too long. It's a little sooty, but given everything that's been poured down the cylinders to make sure everything was freed off, it's not entirely surprising. I'll probably have to venture in there, just open the bottom garage door and try and get some air around the place, because it's not shifting very quickly. But yeah, if this sort of thing's what you're interested in, please like the video and consider subscribing to this channel, and you'll be notified of when I upload future videos. And thanks for watching. Bye bye.